I'm Scottish, so that's kind of our national pastime is to find
Right.
darkness and terribly sad things.
How are you? Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tom. I'm good. How are you?
I'm not too bad. I'm so sorry you had to shoot this in Northern Ontario in the middle of the winter.
Well, it was very, very beautiful, but absolutely the coldest I've ever been in my entire life.
I will say you had a good accent. Your accent, as speaking as an Atlantic Canadian, speaking as someone from there, it was pretty good.
Thank you very much. That's all. That's very nice to hear. It's obviously the most terrifying thing of doing an accent, and then the film's opening in the country that you're supposed to be from. And but yes, we had people to help us, but yeah, that's very nice. That's what, yeah, fingers crossed. Because I hope that people wouldn't when you do it for me, if someone does a bad Scottish accent, I kind of can't get over it. So I'm always very conscious of trying to do my best when I'm entrusted with some other accent.
Drive Back Home tells the story of two brothers on a road trip. Weldon, played by Charlie Creed Miles, retrieves your character Pearlie from a jail cell here in Toronto to bring him back home to New Brunswick. I wonder if you could tell for people who haven't seen the film a little bit about why your character ended up in jail.
He has been arrested for indecent having sex in a park. Basically, it's set in the late 60s, early 70s, and he is a gay man who is also an alcoholic, and their father has died. The film starts with the death of their father, who was very abusive to them, and that's why sort of my character left, and so it's kind of he's obviously gone on sort of a bender when he hears the news about the father and ends up being arrested. And there's a the lawyer says to my brother, like, you have to come and get him. They won't pursue this case if you come, if a family member comes and brings them, takes them out of the province. And he says, otherwise, this character will go to jail, and we both know he's not going to do very well in jail. So a gay, middle-aged, drunk man in those times going to prison for indecent exposure would not have been pleasant. So the brother comes kind of under duress to get me, and it's about our trip going back home to New Brunswick, and kind of bringing up what happened in the past, and also dealing with all the sort of many adventures they get into on the road home.
I didn't know about this sort of law or this sort of like unofficial law that really did exist in Canada, where men who were picked up for indecent exposure, men who were picked up for having sex with other men, there would be sort of they wouldn't keep them in jail if someone in the family would come get them, thereby outing them thereby
Right. Right.
outing them to their family. I mean,
Yeah.
I had no idea. It wasn't even that long ago.
No, it's shocking. I mean, but I think it's really good to sort of tell these stories because you didn't know that, I didn't know that. I think there's a whole generation of queer people whose stories just haven't been told. I think also shortly after, in the 80s out we tell a lot of stories about AIDS and the impact of that on everybody, but especially on the queer community. But what it was like to live in a closeted life, in certain places it would be illegal to have sexual contact. It must. I don't. I think we've just got to. I feel that's one of the reasons why I did this film was I felt that there's been a sort of an erasure of these people's stories, and it's just we need to be reminded of what that was like, and to honor them. I think that's actually the other thing. They persevered and they managed to find a way to thrive and survive. My character in this film is that, I think when we meet him, he's really hit a bit of rock bottom. But also, it's sort of interesting because people often mention in Canada the thing that Pierre Trudeau said about, that the government shouldn't be in the bedroom, in people's bedrooms, in reference to sort of gay people and homosexual acts. But he also, which seems like a really positive thing, he's saying that, it's not our business, which is true. But he also went on to say, as long as they don't do it in public,
Mm.
show it in public, which kind of takes away from it somewhat. I think it's interesting when we have these, things from the past that we think of as these bellwether statements, and then when you kind of examine them a little more closely, you think, oh, we've kind of slightly cherry picked that one because he was basically saying do it at home, but we don't want to have to see you, I don't know, kissing or holding hands or whatever, or certainly not fair enough having sex in a bush, but it was a little less embracing and progressive than I think we all thought that statement was.
It was, in addition to the way that the government was talking about it at the time, there was also just within the community and the beginning of the film. I mean, your character is left out of the names of the children who the late father has left behind. There's there's a tremendous homophobia, pervasive homophobia everywhere. Incredible slurs being said all the time in this small New Brunswick community. With all respect to you, I know you grew up you and I talked last time when your memoir came out. And I know that you grew up in, a more rural part of Scotland. Did any of that seem familiar to you, those parts of the film?
Absolutely. And it's another reason why I felt so connected to the material and the story, uh, is that I grew up in a very, in a country estate, very rural. I had a very abusive father, uh, and I have one brother. And it had many resonances in different ways, but equally sort of as hurtful or as painful to sort of think about again. So yeah, I did. It was sort of even though our situations and our circumstances were very different, I really did relate to that person, just understanding. I mean, the need to get out and for whatever reason, but to get away from a sort of small community or from an abusive parent when you are looking to that parent to guide you and protect you, and when they are out of control, it's a very frightening, terrifying sort of prospect that you have to go into the world on your own, and that's what Pearlie had to do in this.
Is it hard or therapeutic, or do you feel nothing at all when you have to act out something that might be similar to your own experiences growing up?
I mean, I think it's all of those things, actually, because it's sort of obviously it churns up things in you. So it is that is sort of hard, but it's also useful because they're probably very similar things to what your character should be feeling. And then, of course, you've got to keep doing it and doing it and manufacture it for the various takes. So then it becomes, nothing. So it changes. But I think it's to be a good actor and to be able to show emotion, you have to understand what it feels like to have those emotions. And so if you've had a life that's had sadness and despair and joy and everything in it, hopefully you have had little doses of all of those things, then it's easier to access those things. But it's not sort of like it's not like a methody thing. It's just sort of, oh, I know what that feels like, and I can sort of enjoy the feeling of revisiting a sad moment in my life if it helps with my work.
I mean, that reminds me of something you said to me last time you were here. We were talking about sort of the hard upbringing that you had and the challenges that you faced when you were a young fellow growing up in Scotland, and you said something along the lines to me. Now I'm trying to remember what it was. It was something along the lines to me that, like, whatever skills you sadly had to learn then did ultimately help you become an actor, something like that, right?
Yes, I think I said that unfortunately, many of the skills that you need to deal with a parent who's out of control and who's mentally ill and is violent and irrational and full of rage, many of the skills you need to be able to mediate that and to understand it and to try and work around it are really good skills for acting. You've got to understand the energy in a room. You've got to understand someone's mood. You've got to sort of react accordingly to try, all those things. They are also elements that will help you as an actor. They're not I'm a little bit performative, but they're mostly about listening and sensing and understanding the energy in a room. That's the biggest thing of walking. When you walk into a room and you're like, uh-oh, or anything said, you just know something bad's going to happen, or there's some toxicity there. That sort of stuff, sadly, has stood me in good stead.
Yeah, I was going to say it's like a sad superpower.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting this movie to be so funny, Alan.
Oh, good.
Like,
I'm glad you said that.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
But it's got a tone of its own. That's why I really enjoyed it. I really think Mike Clowater, who wrote it and directed it, is so talented. And yeah, some really terrible things happen in it, but also it's got this weird, quirky, little fun energy. And I'm so glad that we managed to keep that in the end product, because it was very, it's something that really attracted me to the script and to the tone of it. And it's almost slapstick at moments, and sort of it's got this really kooky sort of energy to it. And then, of course, which is great. I think you've got to have that in order then to make the sort of hard hitting emotional stuff as effective too. But I'm really glad you said that. That makes me happy.
I think it's also just very true. As someone myself who has gone through really challenging, difficult things in my life, I don't stop joking around then. I don't stop carrying on. And in some ways it can help me out. And I wondered if that was the case for you. I wonder if having a laugh, having a sense of humor, being able to make a bit of dark humor has helped you as someone who's had to process a bit of dark stuff in your own life.
I mean, absolutely. And also, I'm Scottish, so that's kind of our national pastime, is to find darkness and terribly sad things. We have a saying called, you have to laugh or you'd greet. It means you have to laugh or you'd cry. And we are very good at making, funerals are the most hilarious things for us. And we're very good at finding humor in the most awful of circumstances. And I think that's definitely a national trait, but also something that personally has, and also I always think, when you do tragedies, so like I've played Hamlet or Macbeth or all these big sort of things, there's still laughs in those shows, and there should be, and they're there for a reason. You need phrasing, and you need levity, and there are laughs to be had. But my Hamlet was quite funny, actually. I think he got a lot of laughs.
Oh, really? You got a good rise from the crowd with Hamlet, really?
Got a few gags in, yeah. And I think that's really important, because it's very like someone who's kind of having a nervous breakdown. So they're also commenting on what's happening to them at the same time. So it's very like that Scottish thing of finding humor in darkness. Absolutely.
I mean, I love it. I love whenever I'm going through a really, really hard thing and I know everyone's really worried about me and everything's very dark and I can turn around and give a little wink. Just a little one,
Yes. And then the person you can say something absolutely terrible to, about it, that just will get it. That's also really fun. And having the giggles at terrible, terrible, sad things. I mean, having giggles in church or at funerals or things, I love that.
Have you done that? Have you had that?
Yeah. Oh, out of control giggling when you just think, yeah, I've got to stop. This is so disrespectful. And I've done it on film sets as well when I can't. Someone said something and it's just made me laugh, and I know everyone's waiting for me to get it together, and the whole crew are really annoyed with me because we're just wasting time now because I can't stop laughing. That to me it's so awful but so brilliant at the same time. That feeling of I'm risking everything because I can't stop laughing. I love that.
Your drive back home character has no interest in coming home into small town New Brunswick because of a lot of bad memories that happened there. I mean, you, on the other hand, one of Scotland's great champions, became artistic director of a major festival theatre in Scotland. What keeps you coming home? What keeps you home?
I just love it there. And also I love, now sort of splitting my time more between New York City and the Highlands. And, I've got these things like the Traitors I shoot there every year, and just I've done 2 films there this year. But I mean, it's not just work. I've been going back more and more over the years. And I just love, I think it's something like it feels so nice that when I'm there, I am aware that I am surrounded by people who share my values, basic values about looking after other people, making sure there's a safety net, thinking that decent education and decent health care are rights, not privileges, and just that, having that, the sort of confidence and the sort of what's the comfort of knowing that everybody cares. I don't feel that in America. And that's something that I really bask in when I go back home to Scotland, and it's palpable.
How close is Traitors to where you?
Because I could actually stay at home for Traitors. It's not far from where my house is, about 45 minutes. But I'd actually stay a little bit nearer because the hours are so nuts. I stay in a hotel, but it's yeah, it's in the Highlands. It's not far at all. So I mean, maybe next time I might stay at home.
How meaningful is that to you that that's so nearby, that that's down the road from where you are?
I know I don't. It's funny actually. I did this just before the Traitors this year. I did a thing for CNN, a travel show, and I did it basically. It's called Your Happy Place, and I just did it in all the around where I live in the Highlands and Ullapool and all these beautiful places. And in the course of filming that, I realized that why I like that area so much is because I feel safe there. Because when I was a little boy, my granny lived there, so we would come to visit and so when I would go there with my dad and my mum, like my dad would be on better behavior and he wouldn't be violent to my brother and I there. So I sort of realized only just this year that perhaps one of the reasons why I've decided to settle in that part of Scotland is because I always felt safe there as a little boy, and it was always this special feeling of my not the normal sort of stuff in my life that was unkind and irrational and painful wouldn't happen. And it's so funny to realize that on camera.
I wonder if there's meaning there, just that you get to be yourself. I mean, I was wondering. I'm glad you brought that up, because I was wondering if you feel like there's this feeling of coming, like, I don't know, this sort of feeling of coming like full circle. They're in this sort of like Gothic style reality show through this very, flashy outfits, and you're the king of the castle persona. You're able to sort of be this larger version of yourself and be able to be full yourself just down the road from where you were from. I mean, there has to be meaning there. That has to feel like something.
I mean, I feel like I'm a sort of ambassador for Scotland, because I really do love it. And I really think it's got really great qualities that we just take for granted. Like that thing I just said about everyone kind of caring. And it is, and also, like, as you said, I'm artistic director of the Pitlochry Festival Theatre now, which is very exciting and daunting. But it's a whole new thing. I've never done that before. I've said to them, I will not be looking at spreadsheets. Don't send me a spreadsheet. I'm too old to learn how to do spreadsheets. Please send an email. But it's great to sort of give something back in a way as well. That's partly what I'm doing it for, is this. I feel that I've been so lucky, and I really obviously enjoy the theatre, and I want to make people allow great work to be done in this place and invite people to come. But it's something about giving something back to where I'm from, and using my sort of, talent, but also the power I've got for being well known around the world, taking all that and helping the theatre, which sort of was, gave me my break. It feels really great, it feels really nice to be kind of at this age able to do that. And I just sort of think what that would have been, I would have loved to have had that when I was there, like some sort of like Scottish actor that had gone away and done all these things and then came back and sort of welcomed young Scottish talent into that arena. So that's what I'm doing.
It's a beautiful thing, and I'm glad you're telling Canadian stories here. And I absolutely loved watching the film. And thanks so much for the time.
Thanks, Tom. It's nice to talk to you again.